45. Pasuk 45. Vatsarua shebo hanega. The leper who has the lesion, and he's been pronounced by the Kohen as Tomei, as contaminated, because he determined that what he has is a leprous lesion. Begod to be frumim. His clothing should be torn, roshi perua, and he should allow his hair to grow, perua pera, as we find by the Kohen. A Kohen's not permitted to grow a hair growth more than 30 days. If a Kohen doesn't cut his hair within 30 days, and he does the avoda, and the hair grows more than 30 days, the avoda is not valid. The service is not valid. But a person's an ovel, person's a mourner, doesn't cut his hair during the mourning period. The leper, the Torah says he has to rent his garments as a mourner, and he has to allow his hair to grow long. He does not cut his hair, valsofim yate. And he covers his face until his mustache, meaning he sits in a position of as if he's truly in a depressed state, because he's recognizing his predicament, the Tomi Teme Yikra. And he calls out to others. We say that the leper has to sit in solitude. No one's permitted to go within his Dalar Amos. He's out of the camp, out of all three camps, even out of Machdi Yisrael, and even in that location, I mean outside Yerushalayim, he sits in solitude there, and when people pass by, he calls out to them, Tomei, Tomei Yikra, I am Tomei, I am Tomei. So Rashi over here explains, what is the meaning of the word frumim? Karuim, torn. He tears his clothing, parua, begudul sar. He becomes overgrown with hair, meaning he doesn't cut his hair. Val sofam yate ka'ovil. He sits as if he is grieving, he's a mourner. Sofam sars vosayim. That means until his lip, which is the hair which grows above his lip. V'tomei teme yikra. Why does he call out that he's tomei? He's contaminated. Mashvi ushu tomei v'yushu akol mimenu. He calls out that he's contaminated. People should stay away from him because they're not permitted to come within his dalar amos, within his 4 cubits. Now, the Gemara says that, it's clear from the commentaries that it is impossible to recover from this particular situation, the leprous lesion, unless God intervenes and heals that person. Because we had said this is not just a physical ailment, a degenerative disease, something that's contagious, but rather that because he had failed, spiritually speaking, on an extreme level, he became this leper, and therefore he's pronounced as a pariah. As I mentioned yesterday, the words of Chazal, that just as through his excessive gossip and speaking destructive talk about other people, he destroyed relationships, he separated between husbands and wives and friends and fellows. Hashem says, measure for measure, you can be outside the camp, and you can be in solitude, not be associated with anyone. That's the measure for measure. Like we said, this is just a tag. It's an intense discoloration on his skin, and the black hair turns white. These are all the indicators that this is what we call the halachic leprosy. Halachically, he's a leper, although he's not his health is not deteriorating, and the only way he can recover, he has to introspect, do tshuva. The Kohen that we mentioned yesterday is in front of prays on his behalf, and he prays on his own behalf. And only with tefillah will he recover. But it's not simple. One's own tefillah is not so simple. One needs others to help him. Others should pray for him. So the Gemara tells us that when he calls out, I am Tameh, this is to evoke and touch other people. They should appreciate his pain and his plight, that they should pray for him. When he calls out Tameh, not only they should stay away from him, but rather they should understand his predicament, how dire it is, and therefore they're going to pray for him. That's why he says Tameh Nikra. And where is it simple? Where is it something similar? If a person has a vineyard, or he's an orchard keeper, and sometimes, if you study horticulture, Mark didn't go to Cornell School of Agriculture, So if you study that, there are times where sometimes a tree sheds its fruit before its time, and the fruits never come to a point they ever ripen, and the farmer or the orchard keeper, the vineyard keeper, loses everything. So what does he do? I'm quoting a Gemara. He takes the tree and he paints it with red paint. Red paint, which is something which is blaring. And anybody who walks by that orchard or that vineyard, he sees something unusual. It's like, fire engine red. And when people see that, they understand the man has a problem. And what is that problem? People understand. If your tree is painted red, that means your fruits are being shed before that time, and the farmer has no livelihood. So when people see this, they will pray for him that Hashem should correct his problem, and the fruits should grow until they're ready to be picked. And that's a takeaway from Tameh Yikra. Just as the leper calls out that he's Tameh, and other people would evoke and touch people to feel his pain, and they'll have mercy on him, and due to that, Rachmanis, they'll pray for him. Identically, you mark the tree with this red paint that people see and understand what his problem is, and they're going to pray on his behalf. That's the reason why you painted red, similar to Tameh Yikra. But it's interesting that a mourner has to tear his clothing is rabbinical. It's not a doraisa. That he has to allow his hair to grow is rabbinical. It's not a doraisa. But here this is explicit. The person who's a leper, he has to rent his garments and he has to let his hair grow. He's not permitted to cut his hair until he recovers from his leprosy. Then he shaves all the hair off his body, every bit of it. It's interesting. I mean, the Gemara talks about this. A Jew is not permitted to use a straight blade to cut the corners of his face, to shave or to cut off his sideburns, to cut them off. When a leper recovers from his leprosy, it says v'gilach kol se'oro. The word giluach means not cross-cut like a scissor cut, but rather a straight blade cutting the hair at its root. He has to remove all his hair, totally. We find that when the Levim, the Jews, they became idolaters in Sinai with the Chet Egel. And therefore, initially the Kohanim were the Bechorim, were the firstborn. And they became disqualified because they became tainted with idolatry. And since the Levim were the only tribe who were not involved in the Chet Egel, they were the only ones qualified to be the officiants. Now, what was the process to install them as Leviim and as Kohanim? Not as Kohanim, the Leviim. So the Torah tells us, we'll get there, that they had to have all the hair shaved off their body, fully, that there wasn't a follicle of hair on the body, taken off with a razor, similar to the Metzorah. And only then, and they were waved by Moshe and Aaron, and the 22,000 Leviim, so far, corresponded to the 22,000 so much Bechorim, and this is how they were installed as the officiants to serve in the Mishkan or in the Beis HaMikdash. But they had to shave off all the hair. So the only two instances we find that all the hair has to be shaved off with a razor, with a straight blade, where you're cutting the hair at its root, which is called destroying the hair. When you have a cross cut, you leave the root, it's not called destroying the hair. You're just shortening the length of the hair. But when you use a straight blade, you're destroying the hair because you're cutting it at the root, which is normally a Torah violation. But yet, when it comes to initiate, install the Levium, they shaved off all the hair off their body. Every bit of hair. And here, by the Metzorah, he has to let his hair grow. And when he's ready for prime time, when he recovers, then he removes all the hair. But what about, there's a Torah violation. You're not permitted to remove the hair, destroy the hair from its root. And he's cutting the hair off his face, the corners of his face, and the corners of his head. This is an overriding factor. When you're being reinstated to come back as being part of Klal Yisrael, the Torah says that's the overriding factor. What does that mean? So I'd mentioned yesterday that in the name of the Pirkei of Rebbe Lezer, before the Chet of Adam Rishon, Adam did not have hair on his body. Did not have hair. The hair itself, as we spoke about, the foreskin was an outgrowth of the evil of the Eitz Hadas. The hair growing on the body was an outgrowth of the evil of the Eitz Hadas. That covering. As a result of that, here he has to be reinstated. We said that the snake has these rings on its skin, which is equivalent of leprosy. Adam and Chava grew hair, and they were driven from the Garden of Eden. The snake had its legs removed. You slither on his body, and dirt will be your fare, and it has these rings, which is leprosy. That's the Lashon Hara. They were driven there. An Ovel, a mourner, rabbinically, lets his hair grow long, is not permitted, and he rents his garments. Now, what is that? That is a demonstration. He's grieving over the death of a close relative. Pre-sin of Adam, there was no death. So that the Ovel goes into this disheveled state to make it obvious by not grooming himself, not cutting his hair. So that's a pronouncement and magnifying the hair. Because why is this man experiencing this moment that he grieves? Because of the Chet of Adam Rishon. That's death. Therefore, the hair becomes pronounced. The Metzorah, the same thing. Leprosy first came into existence, into reality, after the Chet of Adam Rishon. That was an expression of that. The snake spoke Lashon Hara, the ancient serpent, against Hashem. He slandered Hashem. He told Chava, he sold a bill of goods. The reason why God doesn't want you to eat from the Eitz Hadas is because he doesn't want you to become a creator. And she bought it. And she ate. That was one of the attractions to eat of the Eitz Hadas, of tree of knowledge. So as a result of that, when you become exaggerated in the area of Lashon Hara, it manifests itself as this leprous lesion. That's what happens. So we find over here, on a Torah level, he must allow his hair to grow, be in this disheveled state, rent his garments. Now, it's interesting. Adam, before he ate of the Eitz Hadas, he was naked. There was no such thing as a garment. As we mentioned, the garment was his body. That was the vestment. Now he has a garment. You know, that garment, you have to tear it. You have to tear it. You have to shred it. As originally, when you ate of the Eitz Hadas, your garment was shredded, became putrefied. Due to ingesting the evil of the Eitz Hadas, your clothing have to be torn when you become a Metzorah. You rent the garment and you let the hair grow long. When you recover, since now you're being removed from that state of extreme impurity, you remove the hair, even it means cutting the hair at its root, which normally is not permitted. That's how important it is to be reinstated to original state, which is a pre-sin of Adam, the recovery period of the Metzorah. Now, we're only going to recover from the Chet of the Eitz Hadas when Mashiach will come. That's when all evil will be purged from existence. Now, who's going to purge that evil? Who's going to bring that spirit of purity which will expunge evil from only Hashem? The only one who could help this person to recover, he needs special divine intervention. You have to merit that. He has to be mispalel. He has to pray. The Kohen prays. Tommy Yikra, he has to have Jews praying for him by feeling his pain. That's how extreme this is. Because the only one who could expunge this impurity due to his excessive gossip is only God himself. It doesn't come with natural means. There's no medication, there's no remedy or therapy that could allow him to recover from this. Therefore, it's the Tommy Yikra. I mentioned, the Gemara says, and I mentioned this in the past, and for Mark, who, if he heard it once, I really would have to repeat it again, but I'll repeat it again for everybody else. The Gemara says in Tainus that at the end of time, there's going to be a tribunal of all the animals of the jungle or of the forest, and they're going to have the snake on trial. And the ones who sit on that tribunal are the lion and others. Other lion is the king of the beasts, and they say to the snake, every other species of animal, when it kills its prey, it kills it for a reason, to have benefit. The lion uses the word is dores v'ochel. When it attacks its prey, as it pounces on it, even before the animal dies, it already tears flesh out of that animal. That's the lion. It has such power and such confidence, it's afraid of nothing. The bear first kills its prey and takes its remains to its den, the bear. And each species, when it kills, whatever it kills to eat. The snake, it gives the venomous bite, and after it bites, very often, it slithers off and lets its victim die due to the snake bite. What benefit do you have? What is this all about? This is not within the characteristic of an animal, meaning this is some kind of abnormality, because an animal, now why does a person sin? Does a person sin due to his soul or due to his physicality? We sin because of the physicality causes to be inclined to sin. And there's the struggle between the soul and the physicality. But it's the makeup of the physicality which draws us to be inclined to sin. So it's called nefesh habahamis. It's the nefesh which we share with the animal, and all the drives that we have are animalistic drives, and the challenge of life is to control those drives. That's the challenge of life. When you fail, it's because you succumb to the animalistic drive. When you succeed, you suppress the animalistic drive. So the animal say to the snake, within the animal characteristic, your behavior we don't find. Therefore, what's this all about? So the snake answers, and the person who speaks Lashon Hara, when he bites his victim, just for the sake of pleasure without a physical pleasure other than the pleasure of just talking negative about other people, what benefit does he have? So why am I any more culpable than the Bala Loshon? That's what the snake will respond to the animals of the jungle. So I always ask the question, when a person suffers any physical ailment or has a physical event, what does he have a physical event? God forbid, cancer, heart attack, injury, whatever it may be. Why did it happen? It happened because, as the Gemara tells us, a chulin, ein odom nokef etzbo lamata elmke machriz lumimalo. Person doesn't stub his toe below or his finger unless there was a pronouncement from heaven that he should stub his finger. What does that mean? Meaning that because he has a spiritual deficiency, due to his spiritual deficiency, it manifests itself in the physical. Whether it's an ailment, a disease, whatever it may be. Because why? Why does it manifest itself in that manner? It's a breakdown in the physicality, because why did the person sin? The sin emanated from the animalistic characteristic of the person. The person did not rein in and failed and did not meet the challenge. As a result of that, how does the punishment manifest itself? in the physical. But when a person speaks Lashon Hara, as we see from the story with the animals, jungle, and the snake, it doesn't emanate from the physical. It's some kind of evil which is embedded in the person. It's unrelated to the physical. It's not part of the animal profile. As a result of that, when the person receives the consequence of that, doesn't manifest the physical. It's just purely a tag. It's a discoloration on the body. It's not a deterioration of the body. It's not a contagious disease. It's just a tag, an identifier that this man is this gossiper, is this extremely evil person, and therefore he cannot be associated with any of the camps, and he has to be this pariah, and he actually carries the impurity of the chet, of the Eitz Hadas, which is the snake. And therefore, just as the snake had these leprous lesions, these circles, similar to psoriasis, the person assumes something of a similar nature.